The Galactic Assembly of the United Systems existed in a state of tranquil efficiency. Their grand hall was a place of polished silence, a space for careful thought and polite conversation. For centuries, the delegates from every peaceful planet had gathered to discuss interspecies trade routes and to plan for the gradual expansion of their shared knowledge. To them, the universe was a place of order and predictable patterns. Earth was a very old data entry in their vast planetary archives. It was labeled as a Class 7 Deathworld, a designation reserved for the most hostile planets. Its file was filled with unsettling facts. The planet's core was a chaotic furnace, causing its surface to tear itself apart in earthquakes and volcanoes. Its atmosphere was a violent thing, with storms that could encircle the entire planet and winds that scoured continents. The biosphere was even worse, with life forms that were not only predatory but also unbelievably resilient. The delegates were so sure that no sentient life could ever come from such a place. They had seen dozens of similar planets, and every single one had been a cosmic dead end. The few primitive life forms that did appear were always wiped out by the planet's next major event. It was a simple rule of the universe. Advanced life needed a stable home. They saw Earth's file as a curiosity, a reminder of the raw and untamed forces of nature that they had long since mastered. The delegates looked at the swirling blue-green orb on their central view screen and simply saw a beautiful but empty rock. Their conversations went on as usual. A delegate with bright silver skin spoke about a new agreement for crystal harvesting, while another, with feathered hands, explained the best way to transport a delicate cargo of flowers. Their minds were on logic, on reason, on the easy flow of civilization. They had no understanding of what it took for a species to survive on a world where the land itself tried to kill you. They were entirely unprepared for the signal that was about to come. From that very planet, a signal that would prove all of their data wrong. The peaceful quiet of the Galactic Assembly was broken by a sound that no delegate had ever heard before. It was a high-pitched alarm, a wail that cut through the silent hall and froze every being in place. The main view screen, which had only moments before shown a tranquil image of Earth, suddenly changed to a flashing red alert. The data feed was jammed with a single message. Unprecedented signal detected. Origin. Sol system. The delegates stared in disbelief. This was impossible. The signal was not the chaotic energy they had come to expect from the Deathworld. It was a perfectly clean and highly complex data burst. It was structured and encoded with a level of technology that was far beyond anything a Class 7 Deathworld should be capable of producing. It was a greeting and a challenge all at once. It spoke a universal mathematical language that no one had ever had to use on a first contact before, because no one had ever met a species so close to them in skill. A murmur of confusion spread through the hall. How could a species develop so far on a planet that was constantly trying to kill it? All the data said they would have died out long ago. A few delegates began to whisper that it must be a mistake, an error in the system. But the main delegate, a being named Jex with a mind for numbers and facts, confirmed the data was sound. The signal was real. A species had advanced to the stars from Earth. The Assembly's first instinct was to handle the situation with caution and formality. They decided to send a small, automated vessel to Earth. It was equipped with the standard first contact package, a series of peaceful greetings, and scientific information meant to slowly introduce a new species to the galaxy. They believed this was a moment for cautious optimism. They thought they were about to welcome a young and hopeful race into their fold, a species that would be eager to learn from their great wisdom. But as their vessel neared the Sol system, it was met with an incredible sight. It wasn't a primitive radio signal that had been sent, but a highly advanced data burst. Then a small craft appeared on their view screen. It was crude and looked to be a mismatched collection of metal, but it moved with an incredible speed and purpose. The little ship seemed to come from nowhere and locked onto their probe. The delegates watched in silent awe. They had sent a peaceful probe to an entire system, and a single small human ship had just taken it from them. The galaxy had just gotten its first lesson about the Deathworlders. The delegates in the main observation deck of the Galactic Assembly watched in disbelief. The small human craft, a mishmash of metal and sharp angles, was far from the sleek, elegant ships of the United Systems. Yet it moved with a chilling grace. The little ship seemed to come from nowhere and locked onto their peaceful probe. They had expected a chaotic first contact, a clumsy attempt at communication. They got a calm and masterful interception. A hush fell over the hall. The ship, with its simple design, had taken control of their advanced vessel without a single sign of struggle. A single audio transmission was sent back to their deck.
Oh.
It was a clear human voice, speaking a simple, universal greeting. It was not a message of war, but an invitation. The voice belonged to a woman. The speaker invited the delegates to a meeting to discuss their arrival. The simplicity of the request was startling. The delegates decided to accept their invitation and sent a hologram to greet the human. The hologram blinked into existence on the human craft's bridge. The delegates gasped. The woman who stood to greet their holographic form was not what they expected. Her name was Queen Isabella. She was tall and had a look of calm strength in her eyes. The delegates had expected a nervous primitive being, full of fear and wonder. Instead, they saw someone with an air of absolute command. She was not alone. Behind her stood two human men, Chris and Alex. They too were tall and had an easy presence. They were not frail. Their bodies were strong and their posture was relaxed. The delegates suddenly felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold of space. Queen Isabella spoke with a clear voice. She said that they were aware of the probe's purpose and had chosen to greet the delegates themselves. She said they knew the delegates' information about Earth was old. The delegates watched the way the Queen and her men moved, the way they looked. They seemed entirely at home in a dangerous place. The aliens had believed for centuries that a Deathworld would create a fragile, timid species. They realized at that very moment that they had made a very grave mistake. They had misjudged the true meaning of survival. The galactic delegates stared at the hologram of Queen Isabella and her men. The feeling of peaceful calm they had known for centuries was gone. In its place was a growing sense of unease. They had never seen beings who looked so strong and so at peace with the idea of a violent world. One of the delegates, an older being who had seen many species rise and fall, spoke first. Howard asked, "Did your kind survive all the chaos on your planet? Our records show a new major disaster every few years." Queen Isabella smiled calmly. She gestured to the human man named Chris, who stood by her side. He opened a small device, and a new holographic image appeared in the space between the ships. It was an image of a giant swirling cloud, a massive vortex of wind and water. "This is what we call a typhoon," Chris explained in a clear voice. "This is not a catastrophe. This is our weather." The delegates watched as the image shifted to show a city on a coast being battered by the storm. Buildings swayed and rain fell in sheets. The delegates were shocked by the casual tone in the human's voice. Chris continued his explanation and showed them more images. There was a moment when the ground broke open and tall structures crumbled to dust. "We call that an earthquake," he said. Then came the image of a massive mountain spitting fire and ash into the sky. "A volcanic eruption," he said. The words were simple, but the images were terrifying to the delegates. They saw in the images a planet that was a constant battlefield. The human men and women were not fighting a war against their planet, but living with it in a state of constant struggle. Chris explained that for humans, these were not signs of a weak world, but of a world that made them strong. He said that their bodies were made to handle great shock, and their minds were taught to think quickly, to adapt to change. What the delegates saw as mass extinction events, the humans saw as challenges that they learned to overcome. The delegates began to understand a terrible truth. They had looked at Earth and seen a death world, but they had never understood what a being forged by such a place could become. The delegates who returned to the Galactic Assembly were not the same. They walked with slow steps and their usual easy chatter was gone. The calm they always had was gone. Their minds were no longer on new trade agreements or scientific discoveries. They had seen something that changed everything they believed about the universe. The other delegates watched them. They could see the fear in their eyes. They could feel a deep silence hanging over them. The great hall went quiet as one of the returning delegates stepped up to the main podium. It was Jex, the one with the mind for numbers. Jex was known for being calm and honest. His voice was now quiet and full of a new kind of respect. He began his report. He spoke of the meeting with the humans and of their Queen Isabella and the man Chris who stood with her. He told the council that their initial data was wrong. He said that Earth was not just a death world, was a place that made its people strong in a way they could not have imagined. He showed the holographic images again. The images of the typhoon, the earthquake, the volcano, all played out on the great screen. The delegates who had not seen them before gasped. The images were terrifying. Jex told them the most terrifying part was not the images. The most terrifying part was the human voice that had described them as weather and as challenges. Chris had spoken of these things as if they were nothing more than a passing cloud. Jex explained that the humans lived with these things all the time. He said they built their homes to stand against them, and they taught their children to be ready for them. The delegates had seen a history of great loss in Earth's file. But Jex explained that for humans, this was a history of learning how to survive. He spoke of their cars and their planes that had been made to go faster and stronger because they had to. He spoke of their science that had been made to find new ways to stay alive. He showed the delegates a new image. It was a video of human men and women training. They were lifting heavy metal and running for miles. They were practicing to fight each other in a game called boxing. The delegates were shocked. Why would a species hurt itself in such a way? Jex explained that for humans this was a way to prepare their bodies for what their world would put them through. It was not for fun but for survival. Every part of human life was a lesson in how to stay alive. It was a constant fight against everything around them. Jex then told the council about the human words for things. They had words for pain and fear that were also words for strength and courage. He said that a human's favorite stories were not about peace and harmony, but about great struggles and hard-won victories. They were a people who did not run from danger. They ran towards it. This was the true meaning of a death world. It was not a place that killed its people. It was a place that made them into warriors. It made them into something the galaxy had never seen before. The council listened in total silence. They had seen planets of great beauty. They had seen worlds of great peace. But they had never seen a world that created a species like this. A species that had learned to laugh at the very things that would have wiped out any other race. They understood that the humans were not a problem to be solved. They were a force of nature. They were the product of a world that never stopped testing them. And they had passed the test. A new law was written. It was not a long law with many rules. It was a simple law. It was the first rule of the new galactic order. It was a law that said to stay away from the Sol system, to not speak with the Deathworlders, to not trade with them, to not challenge them in any way. The delegates left the hall that day. They did not feel the usual joy of a day's work. They felt a sense of relief. The galaxy had realized what a death world meant and had decided that they did not want to find out what it meant for them.